Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is Liz Hammon. I am the chair of the Community Advisory Council, or CAC. For anybody who is not familiar with what the CAC is, the Community Advisory Council is a advisory body that reports to our Howard County Board of Education. Every district in the state has their own sort of version of an advisory council. It's something that is required in state law. So I have my vice chair, Mark Covington, here, if you want to say hi. Um, Other members of our executive board who may or may not be here because I'm on a small screen. Matthew Von Smith is our second vice chair. Andrea Stremmel is our policy chair, and Amrish Vyas is our secretary. And like I said, we report to the Board of Education. We have monthly meetings. So when we get closer to the end, I'm going to have Mark drop some information about the CAC into the chat. But just know that we meet every month. Our meetings are open to the public. Our meetings are subject to the Maryland Open Meetings Act. So everybody is welcome. Everything is out in the open, full transparency. The more the merrier. There are no requirements for joining or becoming a member. You just come. So with that being said, tonight we are going to talk about redistricting. I want to give a big thank you to Mr. Brian Bassett, our HCPSS Director of Communications and Engagement, who made the time to be here, get folks together, help me organize everything, so that we could provide this virtual opportunity for people to hear about what's going on and ask questions if they had questions. Because this is a CAC meeting, it's going to be a little bit different. If you've already been to one of the community meetings, this is going to look a little different. If you haven't been to one, no worries at all. I don't think that we're going to necessarily skip over anything that may have been covered there, except for the three scenarios. And I'll get to that in just a minute. But let's see, I want to make sure I go through all my housekeeping things first. All right, yes. So the three scenarios that were presented to the board were developed by consultants. They were presented, by the Office of School Planning. It is unlikely that our Board of Education will adopt one of those as is. And so what we're not going to do tonight is go through the nitty-gritty details of each of those three scenarios because, and as you will learn shortly, the superintendent will give a recommended scenario to the Board of Ed in September, and there will be more opportunities for input at that time. And so what I would like to focus on tonight is the process. Why are we redistricting? If you're not familiar with that, what policies guide that, what opportunities there are for community engagement. If everybody could just mute, please. And then we'll open it up for some questions. Let's see. I'm going to be candid and sort of set this up to be deliberately informal. I will say, I know that when it comes to redistricting, there's a lot of really strong feelings and all very, very valid. As a committee that reports to the Board of Education, I feel compelled to say or to remind everyone that we have one Board of Ed member who was redistricted 6 times as an HCPSS student. And another Board of Ed member whose home was picketed in 2019 during redistricting. So nobody is jumping at the opportunity to just do redistricting for the fun of it. It's part of the job. It's something that has to happen. And it is certainly not happening because it's, somebody has some sort of ulterior motive for wanting to shuffle things around. And I think it's important to say that because I think that gets lost sometimes in all of this. So without further ado, please hold your questions. We will get to your questions. I am not monitoring the chat right this second. When we get to the questions, I will call on folks with hands raised. And let's see if I need to mute anybody. Sorry. Here we go. Did that work? Okay, sorry. Um, we will get to folks with hands raised, and because it's a public meeting and we are recording, the chat will not be visible in the recording. So anything you put in the chat, if we're going to address it, we're going to read it out loud for the sake of the meeting and the benefit of anybody watching the playback. So thank you very much. Without further ado, I introduced you to Mr. Brian Bassett. I'm also going to introduce you to Mr. Tim Rogers, who is our manager of school planning at HCPSS. Hello. And Mr. Galen, I'm going to say your name wrong. Amerso?
That's exactly right. Yep.
Is that right?
Yep.
Okay, great. Um, and Mr. Amerso is our school planning analyst. So I'm going to get right into the questions that I was going to pose. If you wouldn't mind, starting out by explaining sort of what are the roles and responsibilities of each player in this whole redistricting set of activities.
All right. Yeah, thanks for organizing this. Welcome everyone, CAC. Thanks, Mr. Bassett, and everybody else who had a hand in bringing us to here this evening. Um, so there are a number of stakeholder groups, number of stakeholders, number of HCPSS offices and entities that have a stake in this process. Um, to sum it up, my office, the Office of School Planning, is the HCPSS office responsible for overseeing the process of redistricting. Mr. Bassett's office, as the director of community communications and engagement, is responsible for communicating what the school system is doing in terms of redistricting and helping link the community with the HCPSS and the various offices that are involved. We have a consultant on board, and their role is to lead the various steps of the process from the moment they are engaged under contract to the final delivery of the final plan and approval by the Board of Education. So that includes the various steps. I'm assuming there's a question about the timeline coming soon, so I'll be brief. But from staff presentation of scenarios through board deliberations, public hearings, and work sessions. They are the third-party expert leader of the process. And then the Board of Education, their job in this, their role in this is to receive community feedback and make a final decision on boundaries. It is one of the things that the Board of Education has sole responsibility for. That's creating and establishing school attendance areas. And let's see, who did I leave out?
Tim,
Community.
the community or
Right.
attendance area committee.
Right. So attendance area committee is meeting as we speak this evening, and that is a focus group set up by the superintendent to learn a little bit more about the process and get into a little bit more detail than we can cover in the community engagement sessions, but they're not getting new information. Um, not getting anything that's not already available publicly. And their job is to advise the superintendent. And that's some of the focused feedback that is being taken into account as we develop the superintendent's proposal for redistricting. And then I don't want to leave out the community. Your role as community members is to stay engaged, learn about the options that are on the table, learn about the process, and then provide feedback to staff, the superintendent, and the Board of Education when it comes to their stage of the process, so that there's a community voice in this process and it's not just staff members doing our analysis and influencing the final decision.
Thank you.
Sure.
So before we get into the timeline, can you please just let everybody know, in case this is their first time engaging in the process, why we are undertaking this boundary review at this time?
Yeah, sure. So the policy 6010 guides a lot of the work that the Office of School Planning does, especially redistricting. And one of the keys of the tenets of that policy is for the board to consider redistricting when schools reach 110% utilization. And so Bryant Woods has reached 110% utilization, and Centennial Lane has also reached 110% utilization. Those schools share adjacencies, so they're both adjacent to Running Brook and Longfellow. So we elected to go ahead and combine the efforts to provide the relief needed for those schools. And the goal here is to bring those schools within the target range, also established by Policy 6010, which is 90 to 100% utilization. And so we don't, when schools are overcrowded, uh, above that 110% threshold, we typically see lots of portables. We typically see crowded lunchrooms, crowded hallways, difficult scheduling from with regard to class meeting spaces and office meeting spaces and pull-out meeting spaces. Um, and so these are all things that we want to alleviate by utilizing space at adjacent schools to redistrict.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, and now for the timeline. So already to this
Sure.
point, you guys were given your marching orders, so to speak. You did one round of community input on
Yeah.
community priorities, right? And a lot of that was around. A lot of folks expressed the walk zones or keeping walkers as their priority. That stood out to me big time.
Mhm.
And the three scenarios were developed and they were presented to the Board of Education on July 17th. And then at that point, I think I counted 5 different times in that meeting, either someone from your department or the superintendent said, this is the first step in many steps. So
Right.
reiterating that these are not the final 3. This is not what we're picking from. This is the beginning of a conversation. And as a community and all the stakeholder groups that you mentioned, we'll work through it step by step together. And so can you talk about that timeline and what those steps are?
Right. So this is a public planning process. This isn't something where staff professionals develop plans and scenarios, and we're the only ones that interface with the board and the only ones that have a voice in the process. This is a public planning process, and we want the community's input, and we're getting it. Um, it's basically a 3-phase process. So you mentioned the board's direction in January or February. And from that point, we refreshed our enrollment projection. We developed scenarios. We conducted that spring round of community engagement, and we presented those scenarios in July. So that's phase 1. That's a phase that's basically driven by staff. Then phase 2 is what we're in right now, where the end of this phase, the culmination is the superintendent's proposal to the board. But this is another round of analysis, another round of community engagement, and this round has the benefit of the 3 plans that were presented in the July meeting in that report to enable the community to see what's possible and express strengths and weaknesses, express concerns, express opinions, personal stories, all of the things that we want to hear from the community in reaction to those plans. This phase 2. Once the superintendent makes that presentation, which is currently scheduled for September 25th, to the board, then it's the staff phase the Board of Ed phase of the process. So they'll immediately have a public hearing. They'll conduct a few work sessions, also in public. They'll ask staff and our consultant to model ideas, to answer questions that they have regarding things they're hearing from the community, regarding their own ideas. We'll provide all of that information to the Board of Ed, and that will culminate in their final decision in November. Um, it's got to be done before Thanksgiving so that staff in the Division of Schools and staff at the individual schools that are affected have time to plan for the changes that are coming, so that staffing can be adjusted, so that any needs that individual students have that need to transfer with them to their new school, that can be addressed as well. Um, and so that all of these things can happen, so that engagement sessions can happen between the schools, so that schools that are receiving new students can offer opportunities for them to visit the school, meet some of the staff, and start to become integrated into that new school community. So those are the main the three stages. And I want to add one thing to that timeline, which is has been asked at each community engagement session, and um, that's the public hearing piece and the question around changes being added to a plan or being added to a community at the last stage. So, like I mentioned, the board will have a public hearing where they'll receive input, they'll do some work, they'll have another public hearing, at least one more public hearing, and a recent change to policy requires that any new change that's part of the plan that the board is considering must be covered by a public hearing. So, in other words, anyone who's been added to a plan will have an opportunity to testify at a public hearing before the board makes that final decision. And so there can't be any last minute or 11th hour adds to a plan where a community that hasn't been part involved before is suddenly activated at the last minute and doesn't have a chance to provide feedback. That can't happen. So that's the kind of an overview of the timeline. Our website has a vertical timeline that walks through each step, has links to some resources at each step. Mr. Bassett just added that into the chat for the meeting. And so at each stage of the process, documents, reports, items that are critical to that step will be added in here. And that's a great place to go to see an overview. I believe there's translation available on that page as well. So that's the hub for all of the resources related to redistricting.
Thank you. And you talked about 60-10. Can you elaborate just a little bit more on the considerations that are put upon the board when they are making these sorts of determinations?
Right. So the Section 3 Standards B lists several considerations that must be part of any board, staff, or superintendent deliberation. And they're divided into three categories. Facility utilization is the first category, and it has items that are to be considered around efficient use of school capacity, consideration of long-range projections, not just the short-term outlook, fiscal responsibility, and that's where also the number of students that walk or receive bus service is listed. And other items to be considered are the condition of the school facilities and location of regional programs. And then the second one is community stability, and that's where we see items related to feeds, related to contiguous neighborhoods, and limiting the frequency of redistricting for geographic areas. And then the third category is demographic characteristics, and that's where there are items listed regarding race and ethnicity, socioeconomic composition, academic performance, and the number of students reassigned. And that last one I mentioned is an important consideration because we're always looking to be as efficient with our adjustments as possible, seeking to make the most improvement with the least impact to these considerations. It's kind of a bang for the buck kind of consideration. And it's important to point out that there are no, other than the 15% threshold that's mentioned for under the feed consideration, there are no numerical thresholds, there are no numerical goals, there are no hard and fast lines or rules for any of these considerations. They're all items to be considered, and so a lot of people like to think of these things in terms of black and white, satisfied, not satisfied, check or X next to these items, and it's really not that simple. That's not the way our policy is set up. And so it's a little bit more gray than that, but that's the policy that we all have to follow through this process.
Thank you. I wanted to note, Mr. Barnes said something on July 17th in the meeting about how either he would or your office would also provide recommendations for exemptions when the time came for him to give his recommended his actual recommendation to the board. And I wanted to highlight that because I noticed in a lot of the feedback, people were concerned about having a rising fifth grader or a rising eighth grader or a rising high school senior, and wondering if that was going to impact them, or if they had a 504 or an IEP, or any like very, very special circumstances. And I don't want to speak for you because I know that that's not something that you've laid out yet, but
Mhm.
traditionally you guys have been able to make exemptions for
Mhm.
folks, and that is, I just want to alleviate some of the stress around that if possible
Yeah.
without overpromising. But
Sure.
yeah.
So there's two policies that relate to this, and 6010 is one of them, and policy 9000 is the other. And in 6010, it mentions that students that are rising 12th graders are automatically exempted from reassignment. So if you have a rising 12th grader, your neighborhood changes from school A to school B, your 12th grader can finish where they are right now. They don't have to be reassigned for that final year of school. And then it lists other categories of students that the board may consider, and it also notes that that list is not exhaustive. So um, rising 11th, rising 10th were included in the with exemptions in the redistricting that created the boundary for Guilford Park, which was our most recent redistricting project. In past redistricting processes, the board has also elected to exempt rising eighth graders, rising fifth graders, and then also students with 504s and IEPs, and students with active duty military families are also categories of students that the board may consider exempting. And we anticipate having this discussion with the superintendent as we work towards this proposal in the coming weeks. Um, and we're considering going ahead and making a recommendation for exemptions with the superintendent's proposal, so that in the hopes that the board will react to that, and we can get exemptions out of the way a little bit sooner this time as opposed to waiting till the final stage of the process.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Hmm.
Um, so then, tell us, what are like the next steps for you all, and then what's left for us as community members? What opportunities are left for us?
Yeah. So right now what we're doing is developing that superintendent proposal. So we're taking the feedback that we've received in the recent weeks since that July 17th, combining it with what we learned in the spring community engagement. And we are developing that superintendent proposal right now. That's going to begin the review process here very soon and be presented to the board and the community on September 25th. Um, we have one more community engagement session on Thursday evening. I'm going to get the location wrong because there's been a lot of
Wild Lake Middle
meetings.
School.
Wild Lake, okay. Yeah. So we wanted to make sure, based on the attendance at the recent meetings, we wanted to try to have it at the biggest centrally located facility we could find. And a lot of the high schools are involved in marching band camp and sports camps at this time. So we went back to Wild Lake Middle School. It's as centrally located as you can get, and has a good sized cafeteria. The attendance area committee will wrap up this week with their input. So we'll put that into the hopper as well as we continue working on the superintendent proposal. And then we're working on we'll present that to our chiefs, our leadership, get feedback from them, and then present that to the superintendent, get his feedback, make sure we're finalizing that and presenting that on the 25th. And then we move forward from there. Galen's reminding me that actually the community engagement is Wednesday. I misspoke earlier. The Thursday night would be the third AAC meeting. That's where I got mixed up. So Wednesday night at Wild Lake Middle School is the third and final community engagement session. We're also finalizing and looking at the results of the survey. So it's ongoing. It's currently scheduled to close on Friday, but we have been getting feedback on that from our our consultant. So we're tracking the number of responses. We're taking advice and making changes to the survey to help it be more, try to make it a little bit more user friendly. And we're looking at the results from that uh, continuously as we work towards this next phase. And
And Tim,
right now, basically, yeah, go
I
ahead,
just dropped that
Brian.
survey link in the chat.
Oh,
We
great.
welcome everybody to fill that out before Friday.
I mean, the written record is best. We're listening to people at these sessions. We're reading through the multitude of emails that are coming in. But really, the written record through that survey is the best way to weigh in. And so right now we're testing the different ideas that have come in. We are evaluating different alterations to the three scenarios that were presented. We are um, just trying to make sure that our best thinking in terms of our professional work, as well as incorporating the community's input, are what drives the superintendent's proposal and what the community and the board see on the 25th. So that's what's coming for us. That's what the next opportunity to engage is Wednesday. Once the board gets that presentation in September, public hearings and written board testimony, which will go to the board's email address. I don't think they're accepting it yet because they haven't received the proposal. But once they receive that proposal, email to the board, um, that'll be made prominent on the website and announced. But that will be the way to provide feedback to the process at that point. And then also signing up to testify at public hearings.
Great. So, in case anybody hasn't testified at public hearing before, it's different than public forum, which they do at the beginning of every regularly scheduled Board of Ed meeting. And public forum actually prohibits topics for which there is a public hearing scheduled. So wait until the public hearing to talk about redistricting. Those will be, instead of being limited to the 5 people that they limit public forum to, that one will, it's indefinite. They'll cut it at some point and maybe schedule a second one if they have to. We saw that with the budget
Right.
last year, but it's not limited to like a certain, max number of people. And the testimony is 3 minutes. And there's no, extension for representatives of groups or other larger stakeholder entities. It's 3 minutes. You can do it virtually. You can do it in person. And so when you sign up to do that, then you'll just, have to indicate virtual or in person. But it's very accessible. The worst part is just waiting your turn because you don't really know where you are in the lineup. But if anybody has any other questions about, how to formulate testimony or how to get signed up for that, the CAC is a good resource. That's what we're here for. We're happy to help with folks who have questions about that. And let's see. Did you have anything else you wanted to mention before I open up the group for questions?
Sure. I wanted to just briefly mention that um, two things really. One, that although I want to reassure, especially the communities in Western Columbia, that although the some of the loudest voices and the most frequently engaged voices are coming from the Centennial Lane communities. Um, we're also hearing the testimony and hearing the feedback from the West Columbia communities as well. So just because, um, you know, it's part of our job to make sure that everybody's heard and everybody gets a fair shake at influencing the process. So just because there are more of them being louder doesn't mean that we're not hearing and we're not reading and we're not listening to, and not just our office, but the entire, all the stakeholders aren't hearing the testimony from the communities in Columbia. And then also some of the themes that we've heard loud and clear so far, neighborhoods that walk to their schools shouldn't be reassigned. It doesn't mean stop saying that, but if that's your message, know that we've heard that. and the community stability is very important. Neighborhoods, we're hearing different anecdotes and personal stories, family stories about involvement in community and how communities are linked to their schools, and that's great, wonderful. And we've heard that as well. So that's a loud and clear message that we've heard and are working on incorporating. And along the same line, neighborhoods closest geographically to their school shouldn't be reassigned. That's another message that we're hearing from the community. Um, and it ties in with the other two items that I've just mentioned. All relates back to that second section of the policy around community stability and contiguous boundaries and feeds. And so, if that's your message, just know that we've heard that loud and clear so far. Doesn't mean I'm not telling you to not weigh in. I'm just letting you know that we've heard those things, and we've heard other things too. Those are just three of the big themes that have emerged.
Liz, can I offer something as well? Thank you.
Please.
We are pumping out a lot of information, and we have been for a couple months on this topic. And so the website really a wonderful place to organize your thoughts around this if you want to go find what we've put up. But we've just put out a ton. One of the things Mr. Rogers' office is doing a great job receiving the feedback and really leveraging the feedback to guide what would come next. But I also invite everybody here to leverage the CAC and leverage Liz. Liz, you've been, and everybody doesn't know this, but you provide wonderful guidance to me, to the school system. But you're a phenomenal resource too. So if there's different ways that we could provide the information, this meeting is a wonderful example of that, where Liz and I, and you mentioned that earlier, where we brainstormed and thought this is a really effective way to get some information out. I, as the communications director, also welcome different opportunities, better opportunities in which to inform. And the engagement part is kind of directed, especially at this point moving forward through the board process. But the easier it is to access the information that you need, that's what we're aiming for. And so we welcome that input as well. I was a parent that went through redistricting with my children too. And it's just, there's so much to get your head around. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. And we do, the CAC intends to continue to be a resource for folks. So if you have questions even after this and you would rather talk to somebody from the CAC than somebody from HCPSS, then that's fine too. And if I don't know the answer, I'll find it and get back to you. So what I wanted to do was open up for some questions. We've had several people join since the preamble that I went through, so I'm just bear with me. I'm going to repeat myself from earlier in the meeting. But this is a meeting of the CAC, which means that it is subject to the Maryland Open Meetings Act. So everyone is welcome to be here. The meeting is being recorded and it will be available for the public. It'll be on the board docs website. People will be able to, watch it back. The chat is something that is not included in the recording. And so thank you, Mr. Bassett, for including those links. You actually did Mark's whole job for him. So it was perfect. It was right on time. And so if those links we will include when we upload the video to the website, the recording and everything. But in terms of questions that may be in the chat, I'm going to need to just call on raised hands and have those questions verbally asked out loud so that we keep this at part of the recording, part of the record. I'm going to double down on what Mr. Rogers said in terms of wanting walkers to not be on buses, concerns around property value, concerns around arbitrary performance scores that are, given by third-party websites or whatever, even MSDE report card scores for that matter. Those are the kind of things that I personally feel like is not productive to hash out here in this setting. And so I would like to give the opportunity for people who have questions, who need clarification, who may be confused, who really have something that they need to get answered, I want to highlight those questions and get those questions answered for folks. And the last thing I'll say before we open it up is, having been at a school that received a lot of redistricted families a few years ago, before you say anything online, in a public meeting, in this meeting, in your testimony, in an email to the board or whatever, make sure that it's something that you would say in front of every person at that school that you're about to go to, because they very well may see it and be aware of it. And that makes for an awkward transition into a new community. So please, please, please keep that in mind. So I'm prepared to open up for questions. If you guys want to raise hands, I'll call on folks. I can't see if there are hands raised or not. I don't see any. Do you? No? Nobody has questions. Okay.
It was a question just entered in the chat. I don't know.
All right, let me see here.
You want to handle that?
Samantha, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Sure. So I was having sound issues before. Do you know when the link will open to sign up to testify in person? I wasn't sure if this was going to be on September 25th or a little bit after.
Usually it's 2 weeks before the date, I think, is usually when they open the link up for registration for testimony.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Brian, do you have? I think that's right.
It is, but what I don't have in front of me are the dates of public hearings. Have all those been set at this point?
Yeah, I don't think they all have. There will be
Okay.
one. There will be one directly following, or soon following, maybe even at the same meeting as that presentation on the 25th.
Samantha, we'll make sure that we get that out to the full community, but also that Liz is able to share that through the CAC as soon as it's open.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You bet.
Yep.
And Liz, I really like your idea of one of the things that we don't probably do well enough is ensure that all those standards and guidelines are provided as well. I think this would be a good reminder to everybody about what public testimony is and the 3-minute length and providing copies to the board and those kind of things. So I'm taking notes.
I'm looking online to see if I can discern a date for a public hearing, and I don't see one.
I don't think it's been announced.
No, it just says September through November public hearings. Yeah. So, yep. So we'll definitely be sure to make folks aware, but also check your local school bulletins that go out either weekly or bi-weekly. They should be putting stuff like that in there for like upcoming community events and things like that. Are there any other questions? Concerns? Oh.
Mark did a phenomenal job of making sure everybody had what they needed. So I think that.
Okay. So, yes, he did. He absolutely did. Okay. Mark, can you please put a link in the chat to the CAC webpage? And I will make another plug for the CAC. If you missed the preamble, we're the Board of Education's advisory body, and membership is open to anyone in the community. There aren't any requirements. We have a brief form that is linked there on the CAC site that Mark is putting in the chat. And it just asks for your name and your email. And then we vote people in every month at our monthly meetings. This meeting is not a membership meeting. This is a special meeting. But our membership meetings are September through May. And we do things like this, where we have management come and give us information, or we have community groups come and talk about various initiatives in the community. But we have an opportunity to interact with central office staff, with members of the Board of Education. Thank you, Mark. There's your, you got it. And we welcome, everyone. It's not a demanding thing to be a member of the CAC. You come if you want to come. You don't come if you don't want to come. And once you're on the list, you will get all the emails and agendas for upcoming meetings. Mark, do you want to say hi, introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm sorry, I was a little exhausted from all that work, but no, I'm Mark Covington, Vice Chair, and I really am very excited about what we're looking at this year. These are, let me just say this: these are not easy issues to wrestle with, and I definitely want to tip my hat to Tim and Brian tonight, especially for being so open and so direct and really working for the betterment of the community, the kids, of course, especially. That's always a top concern. But just the transparency and the willingness to hear the concerns and issues of the parents and the community. I know this, let's not pretend. We know there's been a kind of a tumultuous process in the past. There's been some drama that's been associated with it. But when I hear these kinds of statements from the county towards transparency, commitment towards transparency, and involving all the vested parties, it really is reassuring for me. And Liz, I do have to say this, Liz, I'm amazed. Every time I'm in a meeting with you, you were just like you're just so on point. You just like know exactly what's going on. And that's also very reassuring as a community member. So thank you for giving me a chance.
It's reassuring until it's your business that I'm sticking my nose in.
Probably. Right.
Oh, thank you for saying that. Yeah, I really appreciate you guys being here. If there are any other questions, concerns, comments, we do have time. Looks like, Jay, do you want to come off mute and ask your question?
I don't know. I'm out of the town right now, but hopefully you guys could hear me well. Regarding Centennial Lane Elementary School, is the board aware that the preschool enrollment increases the utilization percentage or the capacity for Centennial Lane Elementary School specifically? And how do you fix this problem? The preschool enrollment should not be a factor in the calculation according to the policy, but actually it does because with the preschool kids, they're sitting inside the wall and taking 44 seats, and the fifth grader were moved to the portables. So we're losing the 44 seats in the calculation. As a result, the school utilization percentage went up as a result. So how do you fix that problem? Thank you.
So you're right. The board's approved methodology for calculating capacities does specifically exclude pre-K classrooms from counting towards capacity. And so when we report capacity utilization, including in the educational facility master plan and all of the documentation around redistricting, we're also not counting the pre-K students in that portion of the calculation. So it's always, when you see capacity utilization throughout this redistricting process, we're always talking about K through 5 enrollment over K through 5 capacity. You're also correct that because of that formula and that requirement, when pre-K is added to a school, it can have the impact of increasing the capacity utilization because those rooms are no longer available to be used for K through 5, so they're not part of the capacity for the school anymore. This is all done by board approved methodology, so we're not doing anything that's outside of something that the board has already approved. We've been answering questions about it throughout, so we're being as transparent about it as we possibly can. And Yeah, so I'm not sure. I'm not
Yeah,
sure that there's an error there. We're following the board's approved methodology. So
maybe I can help because I'm with Jade on this one. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but what it sounds to me like is that because preschool implementation is a somewhat of a new thing that's being rolled out, this may have been an oversight in the creation of that formula in terms of um, what what all to be included in capacity. Because I have to imagine, um, well, there many things would indicate that the pre-K was not necessarily rolled into a lot of the new things that have been created, and now we're having to like shoehorn it in. So maybe it could
yeah,
be rectified with a next policy review round or something.
it could. And pre-K is a really unique program, and it's difficult. It's been difficult to know how to incorporate that in our planning discussions. And with Blueprint, adding another layer of requirements on top of what we're already doing, it gets even more complicated. So as we work towards increasing our pre-K programming and meeting the requirements of Blueprint, I would anticipate there will be reviews to how pre-K classrooms are counted towards capacity. Pre-K students are counted towards capacity. A big caveat on top of pre-K is it's not universal. It's not required in our schools like all of the other grades are. So that makes it that is one of the main reasons that it's a unique program in terms of planning, in terms of presenting capacity utilization, and so forth. So yeah, I would anticipate as we go forward and as we look to expand the pre-K footprint and meet the blueprint requirements, there will be ongoing discussions about how that's calculated.
Yeah, I would
Would,
assume so too.
would you consider it as a factor in deciding a redistricting for CLES in this round? Because if you don't, then it will be an unfair judgment or decision on Centennial Lane Elementary School.
Tim,
Thank you.
can I ask Tim just to follow up to Tim something that you mentioned that I want to make sure I heard correctly, and that is that neither pre-K enrollment and nor pre-K capacity is being considered, right? So it's K through 5 capacity of the school and K through 5 enrollment of the school is what makes up the calculation. Is that how I heard that?
Right, that's the capacity utilization calculation that board approved methodology prescribes.
So there's not a discrepancy where we're considering pre-K through 5 enrollment against K through 5 capacity or
That's
vice
right.
versa.
It sounds like you're
That's right.
saying that they've never used a kindergarten classroom as a pre-K classroom before, and vice versa.
I mean,
Uh,
many of these older schools have rooms that have just classrooms. They weren't designed for pre-K or kindergarten specifically. So
Mm-hmm. That's
can
why it's
they
confusing.
can they change
Yeah.
use? Sure. As you know, an underutilized. Well, you know, as we look to expand pre-K, some of the spaces that will be used during that expansion were initially designed for first through fifth grade or even kindergarten, and some will have to be retrofitted with plumbing fixtures and furniture that meets the needs of the pre-K program. As different sized grades progress through a school, often rooms designed for kindergarten are transitioned to another grade or vice versa to meet the needs of the school in that given year. And when we're looking at capacity, you know, each of those grades has a different capacity rating. So kindergarten classrooms are assigned 22 seats. First and second grade classrooms are assigned 19 seats of capacity, and third through fifth grade classrooms are assigned 25 seats of capacity. So, yeah, and so you know those changes can happen to answer your question. Um,
Jade, can you make your comment out loud since we're recording?
Okay, I'll try, and let me know if you can't hear me clearly. The current calculation is only taking consideration the seats inside the wall and not the portables. So when the fifth grader of Centennial Lane Elementary School were moved into portables out of the building, meaning from inside the wall to outside, then we lost that part of the calculation. We lost 44 seats. Okay, and that as a result, the school capacity, utilization capacity for Centennial Lane Elementary School increased.
So if we were going to count the pre-K
So
classrooms towards the capacity and add 44 seats of capacity, we would also need to count the 44 pre-K students as enrollment and add them into the enrollment. And so it would, I
it,
mean, it would almost be a wash.
no, it's
Talking
not a
about fifth
wash.
graders.
Yeah, but it's uh the total enrollment divided by
Right.
the total amount of seats, right, inside the wall. So even though, let's say you add pre-K into the total amount of enrollment and then add it to the total amount of the seats, the percentage is different, still different than the current calculation. So
Right.
with the new method, the Centennial Lane Elementary School utilization percentage will still drop as a result.
Yeah,
Okay.
Jade, correct me if I'm wrong. I think what I'm hearing you say is that it won't
It
alleviate as much of the overcrowding as it purports to on the surface.
Right, because we have portables. If we don't
Right.
have portables and everybody sits inside the wall, then it will not make any difference. But there are students sitting in the portables, and those are the fifth graders, and they are being considered because they're part of the K-5. And the preschool students, if they don't sit inside the wall, then they will not be a factor for the CLES utilization calculation. So even though theoretically they are not part of it, but in fact, the reality is yes, because they are occupying the seats, 44 seats inside the wall. And this is something that I talked to, what is Mr. Brown, Cornell?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like a month ago. And he said, yeah, that's true. It is affecting it's giving a false image, a false number percentage for CLES specifically.
To me, it sounds like almost that more students would have to be moved out in order to alleviate that. Is that what I'm
The,
hearing you say?
the preschool kids, if they don't occupy the seats inside the wall, then they are not affecting
So,
the
so Jade,
calculation at all. But
Jade, so then are you saying that if it was actually if the pre-K were in the portable and the fifth grade were in the walls, it would be a different calculation? Is that what you're
it will be
saying?
a it will be a correct calculation.
Okay.
I'm not saying hey, preschool is making the school more crowded or
Right,
less
right, right.
crowded. No, I'm just
Right.
I'm just talking about the
Yeah,
calculation itself.
right.
You're correct.
Yeah,
If
and
the
the phrase
pre-K
inside the wall is the key, I think is what you're saying.
Correct.
Right.
You're right. Absolutely. So
Yeah.
basically, what I'm saying is that CLES is being considered, like over considered for the capacity issue. And the fact is, it's not. the capacity is lower than what you see on paper right now. The
All right.
percentage is lower. And
Jen.
I'm sure, go ahead.
So you're fine. I was just going to say, I appreciate you highlighting that and bringing that up, because as Mr. Rogers said, like they are just following the directives that they have in the policy. And so like it's not like they're making errors there, but the policy may be not the best in terms of the situation we find ourselves in now. And that's probably confusing things. So I think the best thing at this point would just to be, I mean, I'm sure they will take it back to their team to mention that this feedback came through. And the CAC will definitely mention it to the Board of Ed folks that this feedback came through. But at this point, I mean, I think that for Office of School Planning purposes, hands are tied by what it currently says that they're supposed to do. So this is helpful, though, to have the feedback.
Thank you. I'm sure that Mr. Roger and everybody in the planning has been aware of this situation or this problem, and a fair consideration and taking it into the consideration. Because I mean, breaking up a community is a very heartbreaking thing, and we don't want to do it unless it's really necessary. And we've already seen the problem. The Centennial Lane Elementary School is able to handle, with the portables and everything they have, is able to handle the current amount of students. I mean, look at Montgomery County. Some schools utilization is like 145, 150% before they get redistricted, and we're only talking about how much?
Right.
3%. In fact, 3% over, and we
Right.
want to divide the community.
Well, I would like to caution against saying things like we want to divide the community, because clearly nobody wants to divide the community.
Yeah, but that's going to happen. That's what's happening if we redistrict Centennial Lane Elementary School. I feel really, really horrible about it. I feel really, really, really sad. Maybe the school can, the board and the planning office can reconsider, maybe even increase, the criteria. Instead of looking at 90 to 110, maybe 90 to 120, 115, 118% instead. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I mean, we're doing okay. Yeah.
I mean, that's definitely, I mean, that is feedback that you are welcome to give to the board, that we can help share that with the board. I think that I'm not sure that it would, who knows? I don't know how many families would agree that they're okay with their kids going to a school that has a higher capacity utilization. And
I mean, some of these I can add. Oh, I'm sorry, Liz.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to add, in some cases, when you start getting closer to into those upper levels of utilization, you run into a situation where, because of the capacity of spaces like the cafeteria, you have students eating lunch, but you can't have an entire grade eat lunch together.
And there's only
Because
so
of the
many kids, that can go up and down the hallway at the same time. And
yeah, the building as a whole was designed to provide the educational program for that level at the time it was constructed to a certain number of students. And when you start getting to, I mean, that's why it's at 110% right now, but when you start getting above that, especially, you run into situations where even with portables to add classrooms, you still have situations where other portions of the building were not built to sustain that level of enrollment and provide the 2025, 2026 educational program to that higher number of students. And so the
And I don't think
portables
Montgomery
help.
County is bragging about having schools at
Right. I'm sure they're not. I'm sure
145%
they wish they could
capacity.
fix
I
all
don't
of
think
those
that's a
schools right
selling
now.
point. Yeah.
You're right, Liz. They're not bragging about it, but the point with our county is we're building new houses, and we're going to be doing the redistricting again, and again. I mean, there must be some point that we can, kind of minimize the these effects, the negative effects
I
on the
think you're
community.
highlighting you're highlighting a larger issue, which is at the county council level and everything, like the development in the county and throughout. I mean, that's so many different moving parts there, but you're highlighting the very complicated issue of just like growth and the impacts of growth on the community.
Yep.
Yeah, so I would say increasing the bar, raise the percentage for the redistricting criteria, maybe by even like 3%, 5% should help. If we don't have to redistrict, we should not. Yes, we understand that a overcrowded cafeteria is not a good thing, it's not healthy, but think about, the trauma the kids will go through if they are separated, with their friends and the community. There is a bigger issue behind this redistricting that we need to look into. Overcrowded, that's something that we cannot solve in the near future unless we start building houses, right? So we're just gonna keep doing this. And another question is, I forgot which school. There are some other elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools that have higher utilization ratio right now, or according to the 10-year projection. Why are we focusing on Centennial Lane Elementary School, which is only like 3%, over, and not the other schools with a higher ratio? Well,
So
I
there's
mean,
there's two answers to that question. I appreciate that, and that's a really good question, and I appreciate that you reviewed the data enough to be able to ask that. Um, Bryant Woods is one of those schools with a higher utilization than Centennial Lane. If it's not the I don't have it memorized, but if it's
It's
not the
got
highest projected for next
151%.
year,
10
yeah,
years, it's going
yeah,
to be at 151%
but
utilization.
exactly.
I'm not talking about the schools that are being reviewed currently. I'm talking
Yeah,
about
but
the
this is
schools
part of my
that are
answer
out.
then. So that's part of the answer. So Bryant Woods is one of those that is higher utilized and is being considered for redistricting because of that. And since two of the schools involved in the Bryant Woods redistricting also are adjacent to Centennial Lane, we wanted to review the opportunities to use those schools in both to provide relief to Bryant Woods, which is projected to be the highest utilized school in the system, as well as Centennial Lane. We didn't want to miss an opportunity to potentially provide relief to a school that was also over 110%. Other areas of the county, like the southeast, where Hammond Elementary and Middle School are projected to have high utilization, Bowman Bridge is projected to have high utilization. Um, in some of those other situations, there are other strategies proposed. There's no schools adjacent to Hammond or Bowman Bridge that have enough capacity to provide available to provide the relief that they need. So they don't have the situation that Bryant Woods and Centennial Lane have, where there's an adjacent school with available capacity. So in those cases, the only option really on the table is to build new seats there. And that's millions of dollars in a capital budget that is already basically it's overburdened, I guess is the word. We have more needs for capital funds than we have capital funds every year. And so in this case, it wasn't, no one's picking on any particular area, but in this case, there were two schools with high utilization that had schools adjacent to them with available capacity.
Yeah, and from an activist perspective or advocate perspective, and I'll just say this, and then I want to see if anybody else has any other questions or concerns, and then I can assist you with following up on this afterward, Jade, if you want. But from an advocacy perspective to the Board of Ed, asking them to consider the trauma that a child will experience. And when a lot of the folks from the same community are also threatening to pull their kid out of public school and go to private school, is it undermines the argument of consideration for the trauma that the child would experience for being pulled out of their home school. Because you would, in theory, experience that trauma by being pulled out to go to a private school. So I think and I know you didn't mention that. I've heard that a lot from a lot of advocacy from the same area. And I think it would behoove everybody's efforts to get a cohesive sort of message to drill down on that aren't at odds or that aren't contradicting one another, if you really want to make an impact on the Board of Ed.
Yeah, the cost. I mean, the cost. We're gonna use the bus transportation for the walkers, and we're already lack of money for the
Yeah.
schools. So that's an
That,
add-on,
yeah.
unnecessary.
I don't think anybody's going to do that. I don't think they want to do that. I'm pretty sure that one's going to be rectified. I don't want to overpromise. Obviously, I'm not even part of the decision making, but word on the street is they're going to rectify that part of it so that they're not paying for a bunch of buses to drive kids around if they can walk. I think that I agree with you. That makes sense to me.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you,
So,
Liz.
Jay, you have my number. Call me later if you want to keep going. And I'm happy to talk through whatever next steps there needs to be. Are there any other questions? Anthony, please.
So I want to follow up a little bit on what Jay brought up about basically enrollment capacity is the number of students divided by the number of students accommodated for by the space. And it seems like pre-K, that space is held aside, not included in calculations, and the intent is for the students not to be included in the capacity calculations, correct?
Right. When we're presenting capacity utilization and throughout this process, it's K through
Right.
5 students over K through 5 seats.
So now let's talk about a situation where hypothetically a school moves fifth graders to a portable, moves to make room for a pre-K classroom. That pre-K classroom, how does that officially get designated for pre-K? And is the square footage and the capacity of each school listed separately as pre-K and K through 5 capacity?
So when pre-K is expanded or added to a school, any room.
No, right now, if I were to look at the school capacity numbers, should I see I'll see say a school with a pre-K, right? It should have a
Mhm.
K through 5 capacity plus a separate capacity for pre-K, correct?
We're not reporting pre-K capacity in any of these documents related to
Okay.
redistricting.
Okay, understood. So the capacity you do report for each school, if there's a pre-K classroom, quote, inside the walls, is that capacity counted toward capacity reported?
It doesn't receive a capacity rating in the formula. No.
So so I take a kindergarten classroom, make it pre-K, the capacity of the school, the K5 capacity of the school drops.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
so now what you're telling me is now you talk about how classrooms are reallocated all the time. Is that something principals do? Or when it now, I mean, you now affect school planning when you
Hold
move
on.
when you
Anthony, hold on a second. They are school planning. and
no no
and
no
I
no no
think
no
no, I know,
no
but
you're
listen,
yeah
I want to table this because, and here's why. Not because I understand the point that you're trying to make, but I think it is almost identical to the point that Jade was just making. And I think that we've determined that school planning is doing what their marching orders have directed them to do,
oh absolutely
right? Following
but
policy and all that. I just
right
don't want to
but
to go through that. They heard what we said, and I think
yes.
that so it's
It
been.
just took me a minute to get to my question. So now school planning does all of this process. Everybody does this planning, right? There's a redistricting plan in place, but then like a classroom could get reallocated and change that process, right? Without the school planning process being involved. Is that correct?
Are
If,
you asking would we add or
if
subtract pre-K to change the
Well, if you
capacity?
basically that's what's going on, right? You add a pre-K, and if it's within the walls of the building, you're taking capacity away from the K through 5, right? That's all. That's all like good and righteous when it's through the process, but can that happen outside this capacity and redistricting process?
Our office is brought into the conversation when anytime there's a discussion around expanding pre-K, adding pre-K to a school. And the
Yeah.
planning
so,
around this,
right.
the
So,
planning around this is ongoing and is if Mr. Brown were here, he would be
So
talking
adding,
about how it's a strategic effort that involves school planning and all of
absolutely
the
that's
program
wonderful.
correct.
Anthony, hold on,
coordinators.
hold
So,
on. Mark used to
may
be,
I?
yes, I was
Yeah.
going to say, Mark used to be a school administrator. He's going to tell us about
Yeah.
the discretion that the school administrators have in the
Right.
building. And
So
then
keep,
Jessica has her hand up.
yeah. So keep in mind the principal is given
Yeah.
their roster, if you will, for the entire building, all the kids that are going to attend for that school year. And if for whatever reason over the summer there are a lot of students who happen to register and this and that, there's always a possibility the principal would try to make adjustments. But Anthony, what you're describing, no, that would not happen at the school level. And because the planning, Tim's office would know who's coming, be aware of how many students are coming, how old they are, what grade they're supposed to be in, all those sorts of things. I don't want to say it wouldn't be that a principal would never do something like that, but it would be some really unusual circumstances that the first week of school, all of a sudden, oh my goodness, I'm a principal, and oh my goodness, I need to make a whole new pre-K or a new kindergarten or whichever. Those kinds of things, that just doesn't happen like that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jessica?
Thank you so much. And thank you guys so much for tackling this subject tonight. I have a question about communication or guidance that would be sent out to staff. The last time we had a large redistricting that happened, I was in the classroom and I received a lot of questions during back to school night from very concerned families and community members. But at that point, I didn't have clear guidance as to where I should send concerned parents or other community members that had questions about the process. Will that be a thing that's given out to staff members in the impacted schools?
Thanks, Jessica. It's actually something that has been given to schools for back to school nights. And so impacted schools will be sharing that information at back to school nights. A lot of what Tim, at least that's what was provided centrally for those schools to be able to do that. And yeah, we'll keep getting information out. I'll tell you too, a little insider secret is that what we know from our analytics is that communications sent from the schools are read more often than communications sent by the district. And so we try to leverage the school amplification of this information as often as we can without spamming families, of course, because we don't want anyone to unsubscribe from what we're sending. So the answer is yes to all those things. We'll keep getting that out. We'll keep making sure everybody knows how to be involved, how to have the voice heard, how to provide input and feedback that Mr. Rogers said tonight. Like, please leverage that survey. That's really the most effective way right now to provide some of this input that we're hearing tonight. But yet back to school night was certainly one of those considerations to ensure school staff who return on Thursday. Well, new educators return today, everybody. So happy new school year. But that everybody's got that as they're supporting families.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Because I promised that we would have a hard stop at 8 o'clock, and we're approaching 8 o'clock in the next 13 minutes. So I wanted to make sure everybody had a chance to ask their questions, to say their piece. Maybe I could plug the CAC one more time before we leave. Tim, do you have anything else?
I just really want people to know that we appreciate the engagement. We appreciate the feedback we've heard. We are working earnestly to incorporate the themes that we're hearing into the superintendent's proposal. Something you said earlier, Liz, we're not redistricting because it's something we really love or enjoy. It's part of the job. It's one of the tools we have to address schools that have high capacity utilization. And we're trying to use it to fidelity. So, yeah, and just one more time, engage. Like, let us know what you're thinking. Let us know your questions. We want everybody to understand as best as they can and have a chance to influence the process or engage in the project.
We've got the link to the CAC page in there. And reach out. Our email is in there. You will get us. We will get right back to you. I'll put, well, how about this? I'm not going to say my phone number since we're recording, but I'll put it in the chat for anybody who wants on the meeting who might want to use it. And I thank you everybody for coming.
Thank you for having us, Liz.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Liz.
thanks.
Thank you.